If you have used the internet at all in the last 2 decades, you definitely know the face.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the face that appears, like, faithfully once a year, usually right around December when you're just trying to look up a recipe or settle a bet with a friend.
And it stares at you from the top of the browser.
It really does. It stares deeply into your soul, and it asks you very politely, but also, very firmly, for $3.
It's the face of the free internet, isn't it? In so many ways. It's
Yeah.
the face that kind of guilt trips us into keeping the lights on for all of human knowledge.
Exactly. We are talking about the man behind the banner, the guy who built the place where we all go to write our term papers at 3 in the morning, check actors' filmographies, and then fall down these insane rabbit holes about, I don't know, the history of the spatula.
Or the tactical evolution of Roman legions. We've all been there. We are, of course, talking about Jimmy Wales.
We are. But here's the thing that really struck me when we were going through the source stack for this. The version of Jimmy Wales that most people have in their heads, this sort of benevolent, soft-spoken academic librarian of the world, that's really only half the story. Maybe even less than half.
I'd say less, because when you start digging, the backstory is just...
It's wild.
We're not talking about some tech nerd in a Silicon Valley garage who just got lucky with a few lines of code.
No. Not at all. We are talking about an options trader from Alabama, a diehard devotee of Ayn Rand's philosophy of, of selfishness.
And we can't just gloss over this part. He was the operator of a, quote, guy-oriented web portal that hosted some pretty questionable photography long before it ever hosted the sum of human knowledge.
Oh, we are definitely going to unpack the guy-oriented portal. But the mission for this deep dive, it isn't just a biography. It's January 18th, 2026. So we're looking back at a quarter century of Wikipedia. But we also have to look at the very specific, very recent controversies from the last 12 months. We need to decode Jimmy Wales, not just as a founder, but as an ideologue.
That is the key word right there, ideologue. You just can't understand why Wikipedia works or, why it drives people so crazy, especially lately, without understanding the specific and pretty paradoxical philosophy that built it.
Right.
The central question for us to answer today is, how does an objectivist, someone who believes in rugged individualism and pure capitalism above all else, end up creating the world's biggest communal nonprofit project? It just doesn't compute on the surface.
And what is he really? Is he a benevolent dictator or, as he prefers to call himself, a constitutional monarch? And does that distinction even matter when we look at the culture wars of 2025?
Yeah, that's the big one.
We have a massive stack of sources today. We've got biographical data, old interviews, his new book, The 7 Rules of Trust, and some very, very spicy recent events involving German podcasts and the Israel-Gaza conflict. So let's just dive in. Where does a story like this actually begin?
Well, it starts a long, long way from the tech hubs of San Francisco or Seattle. It starts in Huntsville, Alabama in 1966. And honestly, if you look at his early education, you can see the seeds of Wikipedia right there.
This is the part of the research I absolutely loved. Because his education wasn't normal. It wasn't the public school system, and it definitely wasn't some fancy prep school.
No, not at all. His mother, Doris Ann, and his grandmother, Irma, they ran a small private school. It was called the House of Learning. And it was very much in the tradition of the old one-room schoolhouse.
A one-room schoolhouse in the 70s.
Pretty much. Wales jokes that because there were only 4 other kids in his grade, they just lumped everyone together. So you'd have 1st through 4th grade in one room and then 5th through 8th in another.
Wow. That sounds chaotic, but it also means he must have had a ton of autonomy. He wasn't just being lectured at all day.
Exactly. He was exploring. He says he spent hours and hours just poring over the Britannica and World Book encyclopedias. But here's the anecdote that really, for me, stands out as just perfect foreshadowing.
Let's hear it.
His mother bought a World Book encyclopedia set from a door-to-door salesman when Jimmy was 3 years old.
Okay, that is a classic 1960s move. The door-to-door encyclopedia salesman. Lost archetype.
Totally. But World Book had this system. They would mail you these little packets of stickers to update the entries when facts changed. If a world leader passed away or a country's population shifted.
Oh, I think I remember hearing about that. Like patches for a book.
Exactly, like patches. And little Jimmy Wales, as a child, was the one tasked with pasting the stickers in. He literally says, I joke that I started as a kid revising the encyclopedia.
That's incredible. It's a charming story. But it also points to something deeper, right? He had this specific relationship with knowledge that most of us don't get. For him, knowledge was tangible, but it was also mutable.
Yes. It wasn't static. It wasn't just handed down from on high. It was a living thing that needed maintenance. It required human intervention to stay correct.
He wasn't just consuming the book, he was physically patching the code of the book.
Precisely. That's the perfect way to put it.
Yes.
However, as he got older, his interest kind of shifted from consuming knowledge to the systems that manage value. He became a numbers guy.
And numbers guy.
He went to Auburn for a degree in finance, then the University of Alabama for his master's. He even started a PhD program in finance at Indiana University.
But he didn't finish the PhD, right?
Nope. He claimed he got bored, just didn't write the dissertation.
Which is such a specific kind of flex. Oh, I could have been a doctor of finance, but, it just wasn't interesting enough. So instead, he moves to Chicago in 1994. And this is the pivot point that I think surprises people who only know him as the Wikipedia guy.
It really does.
He doesn't go there to write code.
Yeah.
He doesn't go there for a tech job. He goes there to trade.
Right. He takes a job at a firm called Chicago Options Associates. He's a futures and options trader.
Okay, so for anyone listening who might not be deep in the finance world, can we just clarify what that actually means? He's not just buying some Apple stock and holding it for 10 years.
No. This is pure speculation. Futures and options are what we call derivatives. He's making bets on the future price of things, of interest rates, of foreign currency fluctuations. He's analyzing data to predict where value is going to flow next.
So it's high risk, high reward.
Absolutely. And this is crucial for you to understand. Jimmy Wales is not a hippie. He is a capitalist speculator. He understands markets. He understands incentives. He gets how millions of decentralized actions create a single truth, which, in finance, is the price.
So his brain is already wired to see the world as this big decentralized network of information that all boils down to a single outcome.
Exactly. The market is just a massive, messy, beautiful mechanism for processing information, and he was good at it too.
He made enough money to basically self-fund all his later internet ventures. He wasn't a starving artist in a garage.
Not at all. But while he's there, making money on interest rates and staring at Bloomberg terminals, he develops what he calls an addiction.
The internet addiction.
The internet addiction.
Yeah.
Specifically MUDs, multi-user dungeons.
Right. I remember reading about these. This is before World of Warcraft, before we had these incredible high-definition graphics. This was just text.
Just text. These were text-based role-playing games. You type commands, go north, attack goblin, cast spell, and the game would respond with a line of text. But, more importantly, other users would respond.
So it was a social game.
It was a social world. And Wales was obsessed. But what he saw in the MUDs wasn't just a game. He saw a large-scale collaborative computer network in action.
He saw the code for human interaction.
He saw people building a world together, line by line by line, effectively for free, just for the prestige and the fun of it. He realized that computer code could foster human collaboration on a massive, massive scale.
Okay, so now the pieces are coming together.
Yeah.
He has the capital from trading, and he has the vision from gaming. And in 1996, he decides to build his own little corner of the internet.
He does, and this is where we get to the elephant in the room, or maybe the babe in the room. We have to talk about Bomis.
We have to. It's a part of the history that Wales has had let's call it a complicated relationship with.
That's a diplomatic way to put it. He spent a lot of time trying to reframe this period.
So, in 1996, Wales co-founds this thing called Bomis. And looking at the sources, the description is, well, it's pretty vivid.
Well, Wales today calls it a guy-oriented search engine. He compares the target market to Maxim magazine, which, if you remember the 90s, was huge.
Oh, yeah. Maxim was everywhere.
And Bomis featured user-generated web rings, which were just collections of links on topics like cars, sports, that sort of thing. But the part that paid the bills, or at least generated the traffic, was what the sources unequivocally call softcore pornography.
I believe the preferred term from Wales himself is glamour photography.
Or erotic photography. There was a significant tussle over the terminology later on. But let's be real, it was the laddie web of the late 90s. It was pictures of women in bikinis or less. That's what it was.
So Bomis itself wasn't a huge moneymaker, right? It wasn't Google.
No, it struggled. But it provided the server infrastructure and, crucially, the initial capital for his real passion project, the encyclopedia.
It's kind of poetic. In a really weird way, the sum of all human knowledge was essentially bankrolled by a site for guys looking at pictures of models.
It is the history of technology in a nutshell, isn't it? Adult content often drives innovation, from VHS to internet payment systems. But Wales wanted to be taken seriously. He had this grand vision for a free encyclopedia. So in the year 2000, he launches Nupedia.
Nupedia, not Wikipedia.
Not Wikipedia, Nupedia. And this is a classic example of doing it the hard way. Wales is an academic at heart, remember? So he hires a guy named Larry Sanger, and we are going to talk a lot more about him later, as the editor-in-chief.
And what was their model?
Oh, it was the most rigid, top-down academic process you can imagine. They set up a 7-step peer review process.
7 steps. That sounds like getting a bill through Congress.
It was probably harder. They only wanted expert written entries. They wanted it to be as good as Britannica right out of the gate.
Right.
But it was just a massive bottleneck. It was terrifyingly slow.
And there's a great story Wales tells about this, right? About how even he was paralyzed by his own system.
Yeah, in an October 2009 speech, he admits this. Wait, the guy who owns the site was too scared to post?
Yes. He wanted to write an article about Robert C. Merton, the Nobel Prize-winning economist. Wales knows finance. This is his wheelhouse.
Right. He should be the expert.
But he was too intimidated to submit the draft because he knew it would be torn apart by these prestigious finance professors on the Nupedia review board. He said it felt like handing in a grad school essay to the toughest professors you can imagine.
Wow. So if the founder himself is too scared to contribute, you know your platform has a fundamental design flaw.
And the numbers showed it. Nupedia was just crawling. It was dying on the vine.
Uh-uh.
I think they produced fewer than 24 articles in the first year.
Just a total failure. They needed a way to generate content faster. And this is where the happy accident happens.
The taco dinner.
The legendary taco dinner. So Larry Sanger, Wales' editor-in-chief, is having dinner with a computer programmer named Ben Kovitz. This is January 2001. And Kovitz starts explaining this concept called a wiki.
Which means quick in Hawaiian, I think.
Exactly. But in tech terms, it meant a website where literally anyone could edit the page right there in the browser. No HTML skills needed, no submission process, no 7-step review. Just click edit, type, and save.
And Sanger has a light bulb moment.
A huge one. He thinks, wait a minute, we can use this as a feeder system for Nupedia. We can let the messy public write the drafts using the wiki, and then our experts can come in and polish them.
So it wasn't even supposed to be the encyclopedia. It was just the scratch pad for the real encyclopedia.
Precisely. It was the holding pen for the chaotic public. Sanger brings the idea to Wales, and Wales is skeptical. He is genuinely worried it's going to produce, and this is his quote, complete rubbish.
But he goes along with it.
He does. Nupedia is stalled, so he agrees to try it. They launch Wikipedia on January 15th, 2001.
And he admits he used to wake up in the middle of the night, right?
Oh, no.
To check the recent edits because he was so paranoid about vandals just destroying the entire site.
But then something amazing happened. The rubbish didn't take over. A community formed. People started self-regulating. Vandals would deface a page, and someone else would fix it a minute later. In a few days, Wikipedia had more articles than Nupedia had produced in a year. The scratchpad ate the project.
And Wales claims he wrote the very first words on the site.
Hello world, the standard test phrase for any programmer. A very humble beginning for a website that would eventually destroy the business model of every printed encyclopedia on the planet.
Okay, so the tool works. The community builds. But here's where it gets really interesting for me. We know how it works mechanically, but why does it work philosophically? Because you mentioned earlier, Wales is an objectivist.
This is the central paradox of Jimmy Wales, and it's the lens through which we have to view everything that happens from this point on.
Yeah, let's unpack this, because Ayn Rand's objectivism is all about the virtue of selfishness. It's about individualism, laissez-faire capitalism. I mean, it is practically the opposite of let's all work together for free to build a gift for the world. It feels like a massive contradiction.
It seems that way on the surface, for sure, but Wales argues pretty forcefully that there is no contradiction. To understand his point of view, we have to look at the intellectuals who influenced him. And first and foremost, there's the economist Friedrich Hayek.
Right, the road to serfdom.
Wales frequently cites a specific Hayek essay called The Use of Knowledge in Society. This is the intellectual bedrock of Wikipedia.
So what's the core idea?
Hayek argued that knowledge is fundamentally decentralized. No central authority, no central planner, whether that's a government committee or an encyclopedia editorial board, can ever know everything. The guy on the ground, the person with what Hayek called local knowledge, always knows things the central planner doesn't.
Which is exactly why Nupedia failed and Wikipedia succeeded. Nupedia was central planning. It was a bunch of elites trying to curate the world from the top down. Wikipedia is decentralized knowledge. It relies on the local guy knowing the facts about his town, or his hobby, or his field of expertise.
You've got it. Wales saw that the only way to aggregate the sum of human knowledge was to let the people who possessed that knowledge, the decentralized masses, do the actual work. He applied free market principles to knowledge gathering.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the Ayn Rand piece, the selfishness part? How does he square that circle? Because usually, giving something away for free is the definition of altruism.
Well, in the Randian worldview, altruism is a dirty word. It implies self-sacrifice. It means you're sacrificing your own values or your own well-being for the sake of others. It's a net loss for you.
Okay.
Wales argues that contributing to Wikipedia isn't a sacrifice. He sees it as a benevolent effort. You're creating value. You're satisfying your own rational desire to see a truthful, ordered world. He once said, the idea that participating in a benevolent effort to share information is somehow destroying your own values makes no sense to me.
So, in his mind, he's not a socialist hero sharing with the commune. He's a capitalist creating a product of immense value just without a price tag. He's exercising his individual will to create the kind of world he wants to live in.
He's maximizing utility. And that worldview leads directly to the Monarch title.
Yeah, I love this part. He has these official titles, like Chairman Emeritus, but the community gave him these other names, Benevolent Dictator or Constitutional Monarch.
And he much prefers the monarch analogy. He compares himself to the Queen of the UK or the King now. He says he has no real power. He can't just unilaterally order an article to be deleted because he doesn't like it.
Right.
But, like the monarch, he has the right to be consulted, the right to encourage, and the right to warn. He has immense influence, even if he doesn't have direct control.
Which is a very convenient position to be in, isn't it? You get all the prestige, you get the deference in the community, but you can claim your hands are tied when things get messy.
And he did put his money where his mouth is, or rather, he gave his money away. He transferred ownership of Wikipedia to the nonprofit Wikimedia Foundation. He jokes it was both the dumbest and smartest thing he ever did. Dumb because he gave away a site that could easily be worth $3 billion or more today. Smart because if he hadn't made it a nonprofit, if he tried to monetize it with ads or subscriptions early on, the community of volunteers would have revolted and left. The site would be worthless.
That's the key. That's the genius of it. He traded billions of dollars for immortality and influence. Honestly, sounds like a pretty good trade.
I think so.
But speaking of trading and ownership, we can't talk about the founding of Wikipedia without talking about the feud, the founder wars.
Yes. The Wales versus Sanger dispute. This is the Beatles breaking up of the online encyclopedia world. It's a bitter, bitter, lingering wound.
So the official line from Jimmy Wales today is, I am the sole founder.
Correct. That is his firm position. But Larry Sanger, the guy who had the taco dinner, came up with the wiki idea and ran the site for the first year, says, no, I am the co-founder. And if you look at the historical record, it is, well, it's messy.
The sources are pretty clear that early press releases from back in 2001 and 2002 explicitly called them co-founders.
They did. And let's not forget, Sanger gave the project its name. He coined the name Wikipedia. He ran the day-to-day operations in that critical first year. But then he left in 2002.
Why did he leave?
The money ran out. Bomis Wales' company was funding his salary, and in the fallout of the dot-com crash, they couldn't afford to pay him anymore. So Sanger left and Wales stayed, and possession is 9/10 of the law, I guess.
And then the rewriting of history began.
Quite literally. In 2005, there was a bit of a scandal. Wales was caught editing his own Wikipedia biography.
Which is the #1 rule of Wikipedia. Don't edit your own page. It's like the first commandment, thou shalt not have a conflict of interest.
Right. He was caught removing references to Larry Sanger as the co-founder. And while he was in there, he also edited the references to Bomis to downplay the sexual nature of the content. He changed words like pornography to adult content or glamour photography.
Oh, that is just painfully on brand for a guy who is trying to clean up his public image for the history books. It wasn't porn, it was glamour. He wasn't a co-founder, he was just an employee.
Wales has called Sanger's claim preposterous and the whole debate silly. He views Sanger as an employee he hired to do a job, but this sore spot has clearly not healed. Fast forward 20 years to November 2025, just a couple of months ago.
The podcast incident.
The podcast incident. Wales goes on this German podcast called Young and Naive. The host, Tilo Young, brings up the founder status question.
And Wales does not handle it well at all.
Not even a little bit. He immediately gets defensive, calls the question stupid, stands up, takes his microphone off, and walks out of the interview. The whole thing lasted less than a minute.
Less than 60 seconds. That tells you that this is a nerve that is still incredibly raw, a quarter of a century later. It suggests that for all his talk about openness and truth, he is very, very protective of his own personal narrative.
It touches on the great man theory of history, doesn't it? Wales wants to be the singular visionary. Acknowledging Sanger as a co-founder dilutes the brand of the constitutional monarch. If Sanger is a co-founder, Wales is just the guy who wrote the checks. If Wales is the sole founder, he's the genius who saw it all happen.
And that sensitivity to narrative brings us right to the present day. Because if you think the founder wars are heated, the neutrality wars of 2025 are on a whole other level. This is where the rubber really meets the road for his entire philosophy.
This is the most critical part of our deep dive today. Wales insists on NPOV neutral point of view. It's one of the 5 pillars of Wikipedia. It means representing all significant views fairly and without bias. But Wales himself is a person with opinions, strong ones. And recently, he's been intervening in ways that make a lot of people very uncomfortable.
Let's talk about the Israel and Gaza situation. This is from November 2025, just a few months ago.
Right. There's a Wikipedia page titled Gaza Genocide. Obviously, a hugely contentious, incredibly painful topic with fierce debate on all sides regarding the legal and factual definition of that term. Wales went on to the talk page, which is like the backstage area where editors discuss changes, and he very publicly criticized the article.
What's his specific argument?
He argued that the article was a particularly egregious example of not maintaining neutrality. He was arguing against the unqualified assertion in the article that Israel is committing genocide. Now, regardless of where you stand on the geopolitical issue, his intervention was hugely significant. He wasn't just another editor, he's the founder. When the Monarch speaks, it carries a ton of weight.
And the backlash was immediate, I imagine.
It was. Other editors criticized him for, in their view, dismissing the citations from impartial organizations, human rights groups, international bodies that were referenced in the article. It really raised the question, is he enforcing neutrality or is he enforcing his version of neutrality?
And this isn't the first time he's tangled with this topic. You found something from back in 2018 with the publication Mondo Vice.
That's right. They published a piece suggesting he sided with Israel. He demanded a retraction. He clarified that he didn't support Israeli attacks, but he also bluntly called Hamas a terrorist organization and stated, and this is a direct quote, "I'm a strong supporter of Israel, so I don't listen to those critics."
Which is a perfectly fine thing for a private citizen to say. But for the constitutional monarch of a supposedly neutral platform, it gets really tricky.
It creates what you could call a neutrality paradox. If the platform is supposed to reflect the consensus of reliable sources, but the founder steps in to say, no, the sources are wrong, or the framing of this is biased, it undermines the whole decentralized model he claims to love. It starts to look a lot less like Hayek's local knowledge and a lot more like a central planner stepping in to correct the record from on high.
He also has really strong views on other freedom issues. He hated the right to be forgotten ruling in Europe.
Despised it. For listeners who don't know, the right to be forgotten is a legal ruling that allows people in Europe to ask search engines like Google to delist results about them that are outdated or irrelevant. Wales called it tyrannical censorship.
Tyrannical. That's a strong word.
His view is pure objectivist. If a court record was public and the information in it was true, you don't have a right to hide it just because it's embarrassing years later. He argues that we aren't talking about data. We're talking about the suppression of knowledge.
It goes right back to his roots.
Yeah.
Reality is objective. Facts are facts. You can't just delete them from the public record because you don't like them.
Exactly. And he took a similarly hard line during the Gamergate controversy back in 2014. He didn't buy the "it's about ethics in journalism" argument. He saw the harassment, the doxing of women, and he said the movement was permanently tarnished. He refused to let Wikipedia be used as a tool to launder those attacks into something legitimate.
So we have a guy who is very, very willing to put his foot down when he feels the core principles of the project are at stake. And that brings us right up to the culture wars of 2025 and 2026. Because recently, the pressure hasn't just been from internet trolls. It's been from the United States government.
That's right. In October 2025, he gave a big interview to the New York Times addressing this directly. We've seen Republican congressmen and even the Trump White House launching investigations into organizational bias on Wikipedia. They claim the site has a left-wing lean and actively suppresses conservative viewpoints on hot-button topics like climate change, gender, and politics.
Which is a heavy, heavy accusation when you are, for all intents and purposes, the primary source of information for the entire world. How did Wales respond to that?
He didn't flinch. He told the Times, "Wikipedia isn't as good as I want it to be." He admitted there are flaws, but he also said, and this is the quote that really stuck with me, that they will not pander to the raging mob of the moment.
The raging mob of the moment. I like that. It sounds very regal, very monarch-like.
It's very Wales. He says they are designing for the long haul, for history. He believes that if they just stick to their core values, the trust will hold. And speaking of trust, that's actually the title of his new book.
Right. The 7 Rules of Trust, which was published in October 2025.
It's basically his blueprint. He's trying to codify the rules that made Wikipedia work so they can be applied to other things in society. It feels like an attempt to save the very concept of truth in an era where AI and deepfakes are just tearing it apart. He's effectively saying, look, I built the only thing on the internet that isn't completely broken. Here is how I did it.
So we've covered the traitor, the philosopher, and the monarch. But before we wrap all this up, what about the man himself? Who is Jimmy Wales when he puts the phone down and stops worrying about edit wars?
Well, for one thing, he's British now.
Really? The boy from Huntsville, Alabama.
Became a British citizen in 2019. He's lived in London since 2012. He's married to Kate Garvey, who is a very well-connected PR executive. She used to be the diary secretary for Prime Minister Tony Blair.
Wow. Talk about a power couple.
Absolutely. And he's got these quirky, impulsive streaks that you wouldn't expect. In 2021, he told Tim Ferriss on his podcast that after reading The 4-Hour Workweek, he just doubled up and moved to Buenos Aires for a month. Secretly. Didn't tell many people. Just wanted to see if he could live that kind of lifestyle.
That sounds amazing, actually.
Yeah.
Just ghosting your life to go eat steak in Argentina for a month.
And apparently he's a passionate cook. It humanizes him, you know?
Yeah.
He's not just a brain in a jar thinking about epistemology. He's a guy who likes a good steak and a glass of wine, living in London, trying to keep the entire internet from eating itself.
So let's bring it all home. We have this figure who is just full of contradictions. He's an elitist who believes in experts, but he built the ultimate populist tool. He's a libertarian capitalist who created a multi-billion-dollar nonprofit gift to the world. He calls himself a monarch with no power. But he's willing to edit his own biography and jumped into the comments section on the Gaza genocide page.
It's a fascinating case study in how a rigid ideology meets messy reality. Wales's life goal, as he puts it, is to create and distribute a free encyclopedia of the highest possible quality to every single person on the planet in their own language.
A truly noble goal.
Absolutely. And you can argue he's pretty much achieved it. But the question moving forward into 2026 and beyond is really about the sustainability of the constitutional monarch model.
How so? What do you mean by that?
Well, in an era of these truth wars, of government investigations, of AI-generated slime flooding the internet, is it enough to have a benevolent figurehead? Or does his personal intervention, his ability to put his thumb on the scale in incredibly sensitive debates like Gaza does, that suggest that Wikipedia isn't quite as decentralized as we all think it is?
That is the big question, isn't it? Is Wikipedia the wisdom of the crowd? Or is it the wisdom of Jimmy Wales, just filtered through a crowd?
And as the world gets more and more polarized, that distinction matters more than ever. If the monarch is biased, can the kingdom truly be neutral?
Something to think about the next time that banner pops up, asking for your $3. That's it for this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.